Hi there, Colleen Adrian here with some tips for less harmful screen time for highly sensitive kids. So there's no getting around it. Screens are here to stay. And while I'm an advocate of limiting screen time as much as we can, especially when your kids are younger, and supporting our kids to have more time in the natural world, especially doing physical exercise, which is so great for their nervous system development and their physical development in general and their emotional development. They do eventually, of course, reach the stage where, their friends and their playmates are doing it, and they want to check it out too, right? And it's fun to do things like watch movies with them, or there is some good entertainment. So, yeah, just to be clear, I'm not anti-screen time, and yeah, it can be harmful if there's too much. So when you're ready to allow screen time, what I suggest is that you look for shows that are slower moving and less stimulating where possible. And I found this super helpful and made a huge difference with my own highly sensitive son when he was young. And when my son was little, I don't know what the current shows are, but when my son was little, what that meant was, videos of Winnie the Pooh. And I remember a show called Zooboomafu, and there was Blue's Clues. So they were quite slow moving, entertaining. He loved them, but they just weren't really fast, action-packed, lots of movement and stuff going across the screen really quickly. And it did make a huge difference. One of the things that used to happen if he watched something that was too fast moving was he would actually complain about being tired. Sometimes he would even lay down on the floor, complain about being tired after watching. And I didn't know about nervous system regulation at the time, so I didn't realize what was going on. But I realize now that that was probably a little bit of a freezy response, right? Like yeah, he was actually physically tired, and I couldn't get him, to go out the door, like if we were going to grandma's house or something. So that's just an aside. Um, and I longed for some of the shows from when I was a kid, Mr. Rogers, Mr. Dress Up, The Friendly Giant. Those were so slow moving and really gentle. When my son got a little bit older, we searched the library for DVDs were still available at that time. They probably aren't anymore, but we looked for DVDs of old shows, and one of our favorites was Gilligan's Island. Again, I don't know if that's still available. That's kind of it must be from the late 60s and early 70s, but there was lots of humor, which my son loved, but it was slower moving, not really any violence, unless you count the skipper kind of whacking Gilligan over the head once in a while with his skipper hat when Gilligan did something that seemed not very smart. And of course, in the big picture here, just pay attention to how different shows affect your child. Watch their behavior afterwards and notice. One of the things that I implemented for a while when my son got a little bit older, and we talked about it in terms of reconnecting with your body, was to just get outside. And, if he was going to have some screen time, the condition was that he got outside and did something that would help reconnect him to his body and his senses afterwards. So maybe playing outside for a little bit after the screen time. One other thing I want to mention about that's an advantage, and again, I don't even know, this might be kind of outdated. I don't even know if DVDs are still available, but using DVDs in a DVD machine was fantastic because there was no ads and there was no access to other online sites. So I really loved that. Again, I don't know if it's possible to still get things that are even maybe on a data stick that are recorded as opposed to something that has access to the internet where they can flick around to other websites. More and more parents that I hear from are discovering that when they limit screen time, the easier it is to parent their kids in the long run because their kids' behavior is like night and day. It's better when they have less screen time and more physical activity. It's just far, far easier to support the kids with their behavior. So just to finish up here, I'm super curious about what you've noticed. Do you have any tips that you could share with other parents that are watching about what helps you to allow your kids a bit of screen time in a way that doesn't overactivate them and doesn't make their behavior really difficult to contend with? So if you have any tips or anything that you found helpful or not so helpful that you'd like to share in the comments below, I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for listening.